Hello and welcome to Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey. Today I'm joined by Spencer Perry to talk about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. After we discussed the trilogy of Caesar's story, we're jumping into the future with this one, and pretty excited for the discussion. If you enjoy these videos, please like them, subscribe to the channel. Helps out a great deal. We do have the podcast in audio-only format. If you like whatever podcast service you use, you can find us there more than likely. Let's talk about apes. Spencer, welcome back again.
Thanks, Mikey.
We have gone through the trilogy. We are now here for the kingdom. What are your general top thoughts on what this new Planet of the Apes movie is like?
I really loved it for the most part, and my biggest complaints stem from, and we can get into it specifically later, because my biggest complaints stem largely from the final 20 minutes or so. And I thought it was a really interesting, continuation of this version of Apes. I thought it built on what came before it really well in an interesting way. And I'm a big fan of anything with that post-apocalyptic aesthetic. So the way that they're able to create new worlds and show how like this clan of apes have built their houses in old power poles, and then climb through the remains of old buildings to get the eagle eggs out of the nests and stuff is I find that stuff really fun and cool from a storytelling perspective.
Before we go even further, I have to just say I could not think about Chris Farley in what is the name of the movie? It was the last one he did with Matthew Perry, where he does climb up a tree.
The one where they're like pioneers.
Yeah, it's the Lewis and Clark adjacent story. Yeah,
I can't remember what that was called.
But he climbs to the top of a tree into a bird's nest and it's like, yes, I'm going to get these eggs, and then a bird attacks him, and it's very good. Continue.
And then I'll just say the other thing is that I was surprised by the opening scene of Caesar's funeral. I really kind of thought it would just start immediately 300 years later, and I was glad that they had that moment included in there.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I really enjoyed this movie. I think that there are, I'll just get this out of the way. Dawn and War are at the top, then this, and then Rise. It is like the perfect in between of those two, kind of the way that those two groupings hit, right? I do think, as good as some of the performances are, I think Kevin Durant is phenomenal in this as Proximus Caesar, but I think Proximus Caesar is also undercooked.
Yes, I agree.
Where
I think he's not in it nearly enough.
Yeah, whereas with what he's given, so good, but isn't given enough. And it's a situation where I'm like, we never actually figure out if he's actually in the lineage of Caesar. He calls himself that, so maybe he is, maybe he isn't.
He's a different kind of ape. He's a bonobo.
Right, exactly. And so I think they could have done a little bit more, because they do talk about the themes. I mean, I'm going to jump ahead here, but they talk about co-opting symbols in this movie. And so co-opting names would make sense as well, right? So I would lean into more of that in a similar, the hierarchy of monarchs taking names from other people. Not everybody named Henry was a Henry, but that kind of situation wouldn't surprise me. I just wish they went into those things a little bit more and allowed us to, the world building is good, but the detail isn't, the foundation is fine, but the flourishes, the details don't really hit as hard. So I really enjoyed my time with the movie, but I was just this could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm with you there, where it's I went in sort of expecting an adventure movie that didn't have a lot to say. And I was pleasantly surprised that I feel like it did have some interesting messaging. And then I think there's a lot of interesting articles floating around about perhaps some unintentional messaging the movie had that is questionable, which I hadn't thought of. So I was interested to read that. And but I felt like it, you know, it's an entertaining movie that not only has something to say, but is also you know, it's one I feel like we harp on a lot when we talk about these movies about the abilities of Weta effects. And, you know, I mean, how can you not continue to sing their praises when it's like you see these close-ups of these apes and like you can see like the dots on their face and the blemishes in their cheeks and the wrinkles under their eyes, and it's like it's the detail has gotten even better in the
those details are crazy
years.
but
Yeah.
like the things that are always the most impressive to me are when it's like a shot of an injured ape and there's a wound and you have the like blood coming through the fur, and it's just like it's impressive when you like automatically when you see a face and it looks like a real face kind of thing, but like when you get into the nitty-gritty details of like where tech is the most impressive, and it's like that's like 10 million simulations on top of each other, and that's where it's like god damn, man. Yeah, I do wish I had a better theater experience, because I had some people behind me that were like,
yeah, that's thanks.
Look at the apes, funny, ha ha ha. It's like, no, this is a serious thing. These are just characters. They happen to be apes. What do you do? Yeah. But I am with you on like the post-apocalyptic thing too. Like this version of a post-apocalypse is so compelling, because it's like it's not as much as compelling as like a Mad Max is. It's not a devastation, it's a nature taking itself back kind of thing, and it's always a really compelling thing to have as a backdrop. Like The Last of Us does this really well too, where it's like both show and games, where it's like the reclamation of nature overtaking the man-made stuff is just, there's something about it that like it's ominous but beautiful, as opposed to like here's a desert that they filmed outside of LA or something. Mad Max would be Australia, but you know, that kind of situation. But yeah, I don't know, it's a weird movie because I'm giving it a fair shake, but also I feel like I'm not giving it a fair shake because it lives in the shadow of two masterpieces.
That's its problem. Yeah.
And it's not the fault of the movie, but like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I liked this. I don't know if I would revisit it unless I need a refresher before the next one, because now there's going to be a total of 9, apparently. So says the team behind them. But I think Wes Ball as director is just like the movie, somewhere in between the other two directors, where he is better at immersing the world or immersing me into the world than Rupert Wyatt was. But he just doesn't have as much of the juice as Matt Reeves had to give it that extra bit of life and that extra bit of emotion. There's emotion in this movie for sure, but like it doesn't quite hit as much. And I don't know if that's script level or performance level or direction level or a combination, probably a combination, but like I think that it's a situation where he is more than competent, but isn't quite at a place like this. It almost feels like a direct path from Maze Runner to this, like aesthetically.
Yeah, I can see it. Sure.
So it's an interesting thing with him. I do have a little bit less nerves about The Legend of Zelda, because I do think that this was a good, like, hey, here's what he can do, and now he's learned even more with this movie. So hopefully going forward that's the case. But like it's top down. I think that's a situation with this movie where it's like, yeah, these are good performances, but I have to compare it to Andy Serkis, and like it's a well-directed movie, but I have to compare it to Matt Reeves. So it's, and I say that I don't have to, but like I automatically kind of do, just because it's the same franchise. So it's like it's hard not to. But yeah.
And I'll add on to that, which is that we're kind of jumping all over, so I'll just get into it. Which is that the thing that I think is so frustrating about this movie that I was so enjoying up until the last maybe 20 minutes or so, which is that I was in it with the characters, I was loving the story, and then the third act wraps up so quickly because it's almost like the movie realizes how long it is, and it's like, okay, well, we need to end this movie in 10 minutes, because not only after that, and this is my biggest complaint, is that we then need to spend the next 10 minutes setting up the next movie. And I don't begrudge a movie setting up its sequel. A lot of movies do that. However, the
more now than ever.
The sequel that it seems to be setting up is a story that is settled law. And I am not interested in seeing, yet again, in the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Yeah.
Like, is it cool that there are still people out there? I guess, but they're not why I'm here. And this far into the future, I'm not interested in another ape-human war as like the central conflict of another movie. So
yeah, and like it's one of those things where you fully understand that each one of these movies harkens back to another one of the old movies, but like do we need to be like, hey, they're beneath the Planet of the Apes? Like do we have, like,
especially when that's what they did in War?
Yes,
War
exactly.
was setting up Woody Harrelson's troupe as being the psychics in Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Exactly. Yeah, so it is one of those things where I'm like, I would just like to see, like, if there's humans in a story, that's fine. We have a similar situation with the Godzilla stuff. You and I agree on that too, where it's like humans need to be in that situation. Like there needs to be a human story. And we're getting to a point in the American version of that franchise where like humans may not as well exist in those movies. Like they're big cartoon
people in the new one.
I have not even seen the new one yet. So once it hits backs, I'm sure I will. But yeah, it's just like, it's a situation where I'm good if there's humans, but they should no longer be the focus. I just want to see society growing in the Planet of the Apes now. Unless we go so far into the future that we're getting to the space travel kind of situation.
And I'll tell you, I thought that's where it was going with the ending. I thought that
observatory stuff.
I thought the twist of the ending was going to be her going to the spaceship, and she would have been, this whole time, she would have been the Charlton Heston character. Yeah. And it would have been this like secret remake of the original movie. And I don't want to be the kind of person that like holds something against a movie for not doing what I thought it was going to do. So, and I don't, but it's like,
would have been cool.
I'm a little disappointed that what they did is something that we've already seen when they had the opportunity to do something new and a little cool, which is a little ironic that I say,
because it's taking a thing from an old,
like the old one, but it would have been a secret. It would have been, like a twist.
Yeah. The kind of thing J.J. Abrams tries to hold back from the, it's Khan, but it didn't get out there early kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So that would have been cool. That would have been really dope. But yeah, that's the thing is, and I've not the main actress, but when they start doing like the humans in the bunker, and it's like, oh, you got the definitely post-apocalyptic actress who's in every version of the post-apocalypse I've ever seen. Where I just like that is where I took a step back and I was like, I'm fine with like this kind of stuff happening, but like it's so standardized in what it did at the end of this movie, where it's just not super duper interesting. Because like, it would be more surprising to me if they went much further with focusing on apes growing their civilization forward, as opposed to, we got to come back to the humans. Because it's like, it doesn't feel surprising to be like, or not surprising. It feels like there's a lack of faith in
Yeah.
itself to have to always come back to humans and be like,
I
okay,
agree.
but some of them still talk. Some of them still talk, even though we have set up over this fourth movie now that 99% of the human race is dead or cannot speak. But there, you know, there's some things that I do like in this movie that involve the humans, where it's like, and we'll call her Nova. And I was like, are you kidding me? But then Raka says, like, we call them all Nova. And it's like, that's okay. We're good.
It's
that's
the best line in the movie. We will call her Nova. We call them all Nova. We do not know why.
Yeah. It's like, those are perfect explanations. Like, I'm totally fine with a character being like, hey, listen, we're not going to get into a whole expository thing about this. We're just gonna say it and move on and acknowledge it. But that's the other, like Kevin Durant I forget the actor's name off the top of my head. I didn't actually write down notes this time, but the performer for Raka and Kevin Durant are like the MVPs in this movie to me, for sure. And I think Raka got the treatment that works for the character to like ingrain themselves, whereas I do like, it's the stuff that Kevin Durant's Proxima Caesar, I keep wanting to say Proxima Midnight, but Proxima Caesar isn't fleshed out enough, but Raka got that treatment. So I'm glad at least one did, because Noah is fine. Like, I think the lead character of Noah is totally serviceable. Not tremendous. Like, there's a situation that came up with him where I'm like, this also would have been cool if it was developed a little bit more, where it's like, they talk about how they're the Eagle clan and stuff. And then he has this moment where like the Eagle finally comes to him. And then at the end, the big thing happens. And I do wish that there was a little more build up for that, because it is just sort of like at the beginning, okay, the Eagle doesn't like him. And I'm like, oh, the Eagle's going to like him at the end.
For sure, yeah.
And they just kind of like have a couple drops in there, as opposed to like him trying to connect with Eagle Son, which I think was a fun way to make that happen. Because they could have also set up like a rivalry between those two characters too. And it just, it is fine, but doesn't, like, everything about this movie is where I'm like, it could have just been like a tiny push forward, a little bit more. And if they had, I think it would have been, as opposed to being in the direct middle between Rise and the other two, it would have been a little closer to the other two. So
I agree. Yeah, it's you know, the movie definitely exceeded my expectations. Not that they were low, but I was trying to keep them in check, and it's but it's very difficult when you're following up two movies that are not only, like, you know, I personally find really compelling, but that, you know, the audience and the public have a lot of, you know, goodwill towards those last two movies. So it's, you know, it's a tough thing to crack, and I have a lot of
Christopher Nolan
respect.
couldn't do it with his own trilogy. So like,
sure, you know,
yeah,
I have a lot of respect for Wes Ball and the team for trying. It would be very easy to not try
and not failing. Like, that's the thing, is like, it is not a bad movie whatsoever. No. It is better than one of the 4 movies in the franchise. So, you know, that's a success considering how high the standard is with 2 of the movies.
Yeah, and you're like, it's literally the 10th movie in the Planet of the Apes franchise, and I'm like, it's number 5.
It's up there.
You know, it's you know, there's 4 that are better than this out of the whole scope of Planet of the Apes. But then, you know, then there's some that are like, you did way better than they did. So
yeah, I'm 100% in the same boat with you on that, where it's like, I too had my expectations of like, as long as it's good, that's fine with me. But it has its flaws beyond just like not excelling fully. It has its flaws in that, like, it's paced a little bit weird. You mentioned that it's like a speed run at the end of the movie, but like the whole first 3/4 of the movie is fairly slow.
And I didn't mind that because I felt like we're so far into the future, and we're entering, clans and tribes of apes that are very different and operate under different rules from what we've seen before, that I'm like, I don't mind you taking your time to tell me who these people are and kind of what their deal is and where they live and what they think of humans and how they interact with other apes that they encounter, what their routines are, and then it felt like once they get to Proximus Caesar, and then he's amazing. I love his line delivery. I've been going around ever since I saw the movie. I've been repeating "Are you familiar with the concept of evolution?"
I've been doing the more marketing friendly one of just what a wonderful day.
And then my favorite, of course, is the other great one is at the very end when May shoots the other ape, and he can't talk to her without putting a shield between him and her, and he's like ducking behind another ape, and he's like, "Are there more of those in there?"
he's a real good like Emperor's New Clothes kind of leader, where he's clearly a false god kind of situation.
Well, and on that note, I wanted to ask you, because we were sort of talking about this after the movie, and I'm still not quite sure where I land, which is, after seeing the movie, do you think the title makes sense?
No, but most of them haven't. We had this discussion already where it's like, I think that the names of the other three are fine, but you need to rearrange them. And I don't think that to be fair, I think 8 out of 10 of the titles probably don't actually make sense. It's basically Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes are the most straightforward, perfect titled ones.
Yeah.
But I don't think it does, but I don't think they could do another battle or war situation. Like, you can't keep falling back on that title. But it's also like the way that the marketing went through for this movie with that title, it did make it seem more of like it's going to be about one civilization.
Right.
And so I get what they did, where it's like, yes, Proximus Caesar, this is his kingdom. But like, that's the final quarter of the movie.
Exactly.
Most of this movie is you're with Noah's clan, or you're with Noah and Raka in the woods. Like, it doesn't really fit for what they're doing here. I don't know what would be the best word replacement there, but yeah.
Well, here I've got two ideas. First, I'll say, which is Wes Ball revealed in an interview with us over at Comic Book, that his original title was Empire of the Planet of the Apes, and he didn't really say why he couldn't do it. He just said we couldn't do that.
Because they're going to use that later.
Either that, or it's like a Star Wars thing,
I guess. But that's I don't see that being a real problem.
So my feeling is here's two, and then there's sort of on different ends of the spectrum. Emperor of the Planet of the Apes, or, since most of the movie is about Noah and about him realizing that the world is bigger than his tribe, finding the Planet of the Apes.
That would be good. Or finding, or like journey, or is there a journey? I can't even remember.
There's not. No.
The road of most of this movie is just people on the road. The road of the Planet of the Apes.
Yet another like dawn rise synonym. Yeah.
They have to credit Cormac McCarthy at the end of it. I do like the idea of something that's a little more existential than like just a noun. Because it's different. But
I mean, the best one that I ever came up with, and when I tell you I had it in a dream, I'm not lying. I had a dream where I was walking up to a movie theater marquee and I saw it on the marquee, "Long live the Planet of the Apes."
Oh, that's the last one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is that you have to build to long live the Planet of the Apes. But
so that would be if
it's amazing.
if they want to do 9 total for this, that's 5 more for, so that'd be movie 15. Yeah, I like the idea of this movie being something more like Journey or Finding or Path to the Planet of the Apes, like, or Trek to Planet of the Apes. But yeah, hike to the Planet of the Apes. But yeah, I agree. Or yeah, I don't know if you actually felt this way, but you all you did was pose the question to me. But I don't think Kingdom is the right wording for this.
I don't
by any
either,
means.
but I still don't hate it as
Yeah,
the title
I don't hate
of the movie.
it. It feels like a Planet of the Apes title.
Yeah.
It just, I don't think it's the right one for this.
I also like, very recently Marvel did a comic book that was set in the original continuity, and it's set right before the original movie, and the name of that series was Beware the Planet of the Apes, which is another great title. You're like, I wish you hadn't wasted that on
but
the
that one
book.
almost feels too much like the old stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it is that like non-specific kind of thing, but like it feels like they have to be people in makeup for that.
Yeah.
That would, like, if Tim Burton's version was better and more successful, that's the sequel. But
yeah, probably.
There's also,
and you know what? I will say, I don't
that.
want to get too far on a Burton tangent, but that movie did really well.
Even
though no one likes it.
I just mean in terms of longevity. If it did better in the zeitgeist, as opposed to, because that's the thing, is that was, I'm trying to think. So that was what, 2001, right?
Yeah, 01.
So basically you're coming off of Star Wars Episode 1, weirdly. You're coming off of what was the X-Men,
Matrix.
The Matrix as well. You're in between the first movie and the sequels, right? Because those were 2003, I think. So it was crazy to think about, but that movie was like, that was a major movie when it was coming out. The marketing budget on that thing was banana. I did it again. But it was a bonkers level of marketing on that movie, which is kind of crazy to think about, because like Tim Burton joined up like weeks before that movie was getting made. It's not really his movie. He was just doing the job. So like, it's kind of wild that they put so much effort into marketing that movie when they were like, we already know before filming starts that it's not going to be what we want it to be. But I guess, spend money to make money and try to recoup as much as possible. And they, I don't know if they recouped everything, but like, it did well.
I'll say this: they still make merch for it. They very recently did a sideshow statue of Tim Roth's character from that movie, and I'm like, look, I don't think that movie's good. I think the makeup
is outstanding. Yeah,
but I'm like, who wants to buy this? Who wants to spend $400 on a I can't remember his name, but the Tim Roth ape from the 2001 Planet of the Apes. We're too far into Burton talk.
Chimp Roth.
Anyway. Yeah, I do want to pivot. We'll pivot from the.
We can go back to the actual movie we were talking about. Yeah.
They're clearly setting up a sequel.
Yeah,
and it's clear to me that the sequel is about either another human ape conflict, or like Raka was sort of talking about, the idea of humans and apes living together.
I think it's that.
The problem with that is set up to me as a fan is that I'm like, but we know that doesn't happen.
Right.
Unless we're operating from the understanding that this is West Coast Planet of the Apes and original Planet of the Apes is East Coast Planet of the Apes.
I do think that we're, these are not setting up the original movies at this like juncture. I mean, I would say that War could, but deviates enough that it's like, whatever. But
I
like,
feel like it sort of is, but that's also that this movie specifically is just has a very goldsmithy score, which I
yeah,
really loved. And there's a lot of moments where they're, they have like the humans hanging on the crosses, and it's very Forbidden Zone from the original movie. But a lot of that is just the filmmakers are fans of the original movies.
right, yeah. And that's the thing where it's like all three of the other ones we talked about how they were chock full, Rise especially, like chock full of nods and references
Easter eggs,
that
yeah.
if they wanted to could mean something. If not, they're just Easter eggs, and some work better than others, and some some are get your hands off me. Like it can be hammy and it can be like meaningful, but I do think that they are pretty much declarative of like, this is just its own thing. It's a different take on that franchise. So I have a while ago set aside any like, oh, maybe it's a prequel series, but it's yeah.
Well, then let's wheel it into this, which is the movie makes it clear where they're going next. What do you call that one? I mean, obviously, we don't know the plot. Obviously, the plot would influence a title like that very much so. But my guess is, since it seems like they're going to make people a bigger part, surviving the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that works. I do think eventually you have to do like, even though it doesn't have like oomph, I think you do like a society of the Planet of the you do, or like Civilization of the Planet of the Apes or whatever. But it's when thinking about a very specific next one, it is difficult because there's surviving makes sense. What's funny is you could do like Rise on the Planet of the it's like you could just flip it at this point. But surviving or exile on the Planet of the Apes or something along those lines, where it is more of the human focus as opposed to like a conflict or just like a noun.
I keep a
list of adjectives and nouns.
I keep a notes app list of Planet of the Apes titles as they come to me. So we've already. I honestly forgot that some of these are on there. So like surviving the Planet of the Apes is on here. That's a good one. I had this on here before I heard Westball say about Emperor of the Planet of the Apes. Long live the Planet of the Apes.
We could just Dune it and do God Emperor of the
right. Well, the Legend of the Planet of the Apes. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting. Spy from the Planet of the Apes. Council on the Planet of the Apes. Cult of the Planet of the Apes.
Cult of the Planet of the Apes sounds dope. If they don't do human conflict stuff, if they actually go into like the civilization stuff, that could be very cool.
Yeah. Ruins of the Planet of the Apes. And the tribes from the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, that's what this movie should have been called.
Yeah.
Like that is 100% what this movie should have been called.
From the Planet of the Apes. Yeah.
Man, we got real hypothetical about this one. That's the thing, is I think that it's a good movie in the way that it's like it's beyond competent, but like it's a conversation starter of what can come from that. And I think that that's probably one of its biggest successes, is that it's like, hey, we're pointing towards the future, even if you don't necessarily like want to see that kind of future. Yeah. So like, go nuts on the speculation if you want to. And I think it's a more interesting franchise to do speculation on with that than, a Marvel or whatever, because it is like, we have this huge lineage of Marvel comics where it's like, okay, they're just going to do that story in a different way. They're just going to do that story in a different way. Whereas Planet of the Apes, it's one book and a bunch of movies, and like, sure, some of the stuff from the other movies are coming in, and like a little bit of the book stuff is coming in, but like, for the most part, they could do whatever. It's just a premise that they could throw whatever in there on, and we can do different things of like the Once and Future King. We can do all these grand epics that are, legends of the past, and just reformat them into the Planet of the Apes. And I think it works because it's every great epic. It's just,
I mean, it's
apes.
clear that's what they are doing, because I mean, the Caesar movies are Moses. They are the story of Moses.
Yeah.
And this movie, I was sort of thinking about this when I was writing my review, which is that it's so interesting that we have now made it 10 movies into the franchise, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is really the first that is like pure hero's journey monomyth, like beat for beat, you know, that storytelling cycle. You get a little bit of that in the original Planet of the Apes movie, but not to the degree that this one is like literally like hitting all the beats at the exact moment that you expect them to, which is, you know, to your point, you can just keep reinventing these classic stories and classic, you know, I mean, you can do Spartacus with apes.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of a part of what this movie was a little bit, but you can, and you can do like a version of the Odyssey and the Iliad. You like the way that Oh Brother Where Art Thou is that story, but it's like a musical in the South. Like it's, you can adjust certain things where it's like, you don't need actual mermaids. You can have a group of apes that are like vocalizing in the woods, and it draws that, like, you can do these things that make sense, and they're doing it in a way, but at the same time not in the forefront. And I almost wish that they would just like do a Muppets Christmas Carol, right? Like do the Planet of the Apes, but it's this story. Do the Planet of the Apes, but it's this story. And I think it is basically the perfect franchise for that, because it is just like it's just a format that they can plug stuff into at this point. They don't have to worry about like coming up with a great tale. Just make the characters worthwhile. And I already care about the premise.
Yeah. And the good thing about it is that the franchise is now in a place, thanks to not only the goodwill that the Caesar trilogy has with audiences, but, you know, it's helped by, again, what affects ability to make these convincing characters completely out of CGI, you know, tack that onto, you know, the way you see the success of Avatar, which is like audiences are down for these movies to be something else, because they're there for the spectacle and for the like the visual effects, and
they're there for the sugar high, but you can still give them a protein boost in the middle of it.
Exactly. That's what we're getting to.
Yeah. And I think that this franchise is, you know, it's not an original IP. It's not, you know, it's like Avatar is an original IP that does that. It does exactly what we were talking about, where the first Avatar is, you know, Dances with Wolves. It is a bit of Pocahontas. It is a bit like, it's all these things that we've seen before, but it recontextualizes it, puts new messages into it, and works.
It has like unique characters. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think that this franchise, as much as they are kind of leaning into it, should just do it more. Like go whole ham into that, where, I mean, it's funny to say, but I do think like just do that Muppets thing, like, and it works. Obviously, you don't need a character doing like a tap dance routine or whatever, but like, you can still just go for that energy, and it would work. Well, you got anything else? I think I got everything. I think I top out at make Planet of the Apes Muppets.
I think that's a good ending too. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for this. I'm just going to use it. This journey into the Planet of the Apes with me.
Absolutely, Mikey. Anytime.
Awesome. Well, we'll figure out the next franchise that I get you back for soon. But yeah, until next time, bye.